Roadside assistance. The discoveries that you have made, which I have read about in your books and learned about in your Chicago workshop one recent summer, are helping to alleviate my fear of driving in cars. I'm a terrible passenger. I'm a better driver because then I'm in control and can take precautions that some people think are excessive. In fairness to myself, I once was hit by a semi-truck on the expressway going 80 miles an hour. Miraculously, I was not hurt. My car was totaled, I didn't get a scratch. I'm quite certain that something held me in my seat. I remember, a fraction of a second after I put my head down and said aloud, "This is bad," seeing my body shake back and forth, and wondering how I was staying in my seat. And then it was over and I was fine. I was on the other side of the expressway in oncoming traffic when my car finally stopped spinning and came to a halt. A man ran up to my window and said, "Put it in neutral," which I did. He pushed me to the emergency lane and said, "Put it in neutral," which I did. He pushed me to the emergency lane, and a moment later cars came rushing by me on the expressway. And then he disappeared. No car drove away, no one was walking anywhere near me. He was just gone. Reading your books has allowed me to view that incident differently, with less fear, absolutely. Knowing that I have a lesson to fulfill in this lifetime has helped me to accept more of the why in my life. Robin's story reminds me of many others, including the one by Asia that directly follows it, where in conditions of extreme danger an angel or divine figure appears and moves the person to a place of safety. I'm not sure if Robin's angel was a heaven-sent being or simply an ordinary person coming forth to aid another in distress. Is there really any difference between the two? The real moment of impact for Robin and Asia occurred not when their vehicles collided but when they came face to face with an essential spiritual truth. We are always protected, always cared for, and always safe from harm. It does not have to take a crisis to realize this. Sometimes, it only takes a story. Guided back to love. Growing up in a conservative Christian family meant that beliefs that were different from my parents were routinely abhorred. Detested. Even a mere thought that might deviate from the family norm created a palpable fear inside me. As the youngest and only girl in my family, I knew and experienced things that were way outside my parents' Christian mindset. At the age of 3, I delighted in communicating with angels, animals, and spirit guides. Widening the split between my spiritual world and my parents' Christian heritage was my strong impression of past lives. Early on, I would look at people and see their faces change, sometimes so much so that it took me a while to recognize them. I did not understand this strange phenomenon at the time and thought it might be bad or ungodly, because no one else seemed to experience it. Maybe there was something wrong with me. Afraid of being flawed, I fiercely desired to know the truth, but I would not get any answers until many years later during a near-fatal car accident. In the winter of 1987, a semi-trailer crashed into my van, trapping my 23-year-old body inside. Searing flames breathed down on me. Panicked, I tried each door, only to find them bent and ungiving. I was choking and on the verge of fainting when my guardian angel appeared. Brown, wavy hair encircled his face, and his skin was as soft and smooth as the maroon, gray, and blue robes that flowed around him. Miraculously, he guided me out of a partially open window and through the flames. I survived barely. With 72% of my body burned, along with multiple complications, I was placed on the ICU's most critical list for 2 months. Each exhalation could have been my last. Suddenly, the alarm on my respirator blared as swarms of nurses and doctors ran to my aid. "Code Blue," they yelled in a frenzy. I was dying. My spiritual body floated out and crossed through a doorway into an expansive starlit sky. There, a woman and 2 men who called themselves Ascended Masters greeted me. Dressed in comfortable, neutral-toned linens, they emitted wisdom and kindness. They said that they knew all about me and, as representatives of God, were here to teach me about my life and to guide me back to love. Your spiritually connected childhood has been forgotten, and your adult years have so far been marked by fear, said the elder male Ascended Master. I nodded. We have teachings for you about regaining that oneness. We will show you your other lifetimes to assist you. When you say other lifetimes, do you mean past lives? I was raised in the Christian faith, I stammered. My minister professed that there is only one life, and then heaven or hell. That's not true. Throwing my hands up to my mouth, I smiled as a profound understanding began to settle in. Is that why I saw people's faces change, and sometimes entire scenes play out around them? Were those scenes their past lives? Yes, the female responded. I didn't make that up. I let out a huge sigh. Nothing is wrong with me and I'm not crazy. At that moment I looked down, unconcerned, at my burned body, lifeless on the hospital bed. The doctors and nurses continued their attempts to revive me. Only a few minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. I focused my attention back on the masters. It's time to start our lesson, said the ascended masters. In a moment you will see and feel how similar lives, one lived in fear and one lived in love, profoundly influenced you and those with whom you had contact. This experience will guide you out of fear and toward the deliberate choosing of experience will guide you out of fear and toward the deliberate choosing of love, thus transforming your life. The master raised his arm in an arch, and several holographic screens enclosed me. Are you ready to see your other lives? He asked. A man appeared on the screen, jerking around sacks of grain in a mammoth underground vault. As he counted the bags, his long robe dragged on the dirt floor. He pursed his lips while marking the number of sacks. Not enough to go around, he said, shaking his head and pounding his fist on the nearby table. A moment later, the door opened and a young woman with her hair wrapped in fabric collapsed at his feet. She squeezed her hands together and pleaded, "My family is starving. Please help us. You are our last hope." She raised her clasped hands high in the air as she wept, and her eyes intently searched his face for a humane response. "I have nothing for you. Leave." The man stood up and flipped his robe behind him. The hard edge of the fabric whacked the floor, sending a fine swirl of dust onto her face. "No, you don't understand. We will die without your grain," the woman begged. She grabbed the bottom of his vestment. "Get out." He pushed her off of him and into the wall. She stumbled out the door toward her waiting family. Her child ran to her and threw his arms around her waist, but she knocked him to the ground, sobbing and yelling at him to stop. The screens lifted. Spinning around with outrage, I said, "What a horrible man. How could he have treated me like that?" The three of them scanned me with a gentle smile and replied, "You were the man." The intense sensation of a burning steel rod pierced my stomach. I tried to swallow. Well, there wasn't any food for her. I must have needed the grain for someone else, or to replant the crops for next year's harvest, or... Quote. Defensively, I babbled on until I screamed. I had to say no. With kindness, they said, "It's not that you said no, but that you said it with a closed heart." Oh, my shoulders slumped. I don't think I know how to say no in a loving manner. Actually, you do. We will watch a similar scene from another life where you said no yet remained in a loving heart. I shivered and turned back to the screens, where I saw another young woman, this one with hair to her waist. As she stepped into the room where a woman, this one with hair to her waist. As she stepped into the room where a man sat with sacks of grain, she cried, "My family is without food. I beg you for help." Buckling at the man's feet, she reached both of her hands up toward his face. He bent down and cupped his hands around hers. "No, I am sorry," he said. His voice was firm but soft. "There is no grain to give to you or your family." Gently, he helped her up into the door. Once she was outside, her young child ran to her, and she embraced him. The screens moved away, and I said, "It is possible to say no with an open heart. Circumstances outside you do not have to lead your heart. Instead, allow your heart to lead in all circumstances." I see that when I lived as the fearful man, I created a wave of fear in the woman, which then went to her family. Instead, when I gave love to the other woman, she gave love to her family. Exactly. We are all connected. The well-being of the individual is woven into the well-being of all things. Whether we give love or fear, everyone and everything is affected. They added, "We would also like you to share with others what you've learned here. They don't need to have a near-death or death experience to receive spiritual life healing. It is available to everyone who desires and asks for it. With direction, anyone can learn to see and feel their own past lives and learn from them." The Ascended Masters told me that they would be back to teach me more, but for now it was time to return to my body. The doctors revived me. I felt heaviness and pain, as if I were wearing a wetsuit that was filled with boiling water, trapping my frail body inside. As the weeks passed, the ascended masters continued to visit and guide me. They helped me find the perseverance to make a complete recovery. These spiritual teachings became an anchor in my life. The masters showed me how all of us are able to unite with the divine and heal what feels broken. We don't need a near-death experience to have our truth revealed to us. All we need is to find a way to release our fears and open our hearts. For me, it took a dramatically close wake-up call. For you, perhaps these shared words of the masters are enough. Asia-wide, many people who have had near-death experiences become more intuitive, have psychic dreams, and often lose their fear of what happens after death. They know. The overwhelming majority of us will not have a near-death experience, but we can learn the same lessons nevertheless, as Asia points out. We can do this through meditation, through practices of spiritual contemplation, and through past life regression. The methods may be slower or different, but the results are the same. We see and feel the interconnectedness of all beings and of all things. We understand the need to give and to receive love, and in the process of doing so we let go of doubt and fear. In realizing our true nature as eternal beings, we can reduce or even eliminate our fear of death and dying. Among the beautiful and wise thoughts and teachings in Asia's story, one quote from her masters instantly grabbed my attention: "Circumstances outside you do not have to lead your heart. Instead, allow your heart to lead in all circumstances." How true this is. More than 1300 years ago, the Chinese philosopher Hui Neng wrote, "When we are free from attachment to all outer objects, the mind will be in peace." Our essence of mind is intrinsically pure, and the reason why we are perturbed is because we allow ourselves to be carried away by the circumstances we are in. He who is able to keep his mind unperturbed, irrespective of circumstances, has attained enlightenment. Our hearts and our minds can transform all outer circumstances, bringing love and peace even in the most difficult of times. Fear eats at our stomach, our immune system, our health. It constricts our heart. But fear is sustained by our dependency on outer things, people, and situations. If we are content with the inner state of loving kindness and serenity, which is independent and self-sufficient and not buffeted by the vicissitudes of other people's opinions and behaviors or the false security of our possessions, then we will be at peace. Like Asia's story, Michael's, which follows, sheds light on the near-death and after-death experience. His visions and emotions after leaving his physical body in his past life are consistent with so many other accounts of this nature. They tell of a magnificent recognition of oneself as a spiritual being on a journey that lasts much longer than the human body. Deep within the horrors of a long ago war, Michael discovered his own soulmate. This is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.